Good afternoon, everybody. It's just about 2 o'clock. I know we still have some people coming into the presentation, so we're going to give it a couple minutes. And we'll kick this thing off about 2:03. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you all for joining us for this webinar on the Volkswagen Community and Destination Charging ZEV Infrastructure Program. My name is Matthew Hoskins. I'm an environmental specialist here with the Division of Air Quality, and I am joined today by Dave Willis. So I've got a few housekeeping rules before we get started. All attendees will be muted during the webinar. Your questions will be submitted through the Q&A box and will be addressed during the question and answer time at the end of the presentation. The raise hand feature will be disabled until the question and answer time and will only be considered for those who called into the webinar by phone. So for anybody who has called in, if you press *3, that will allow you to raise your hand, and pressing *3 again will lower your hand. All other attendees must use the Q&A box down in the right-hand corner to submit questions. This webinar is being recorded and it will be made available on the DAQ website at a later date. Finally, we have 1 hour scheduled for this webinar, but if we wrap everything up and we're able to answer questions with time to spare, then we do have the option to adjourn early. If we're not able to answer all the questions by the end of our time, then we will let you know how to get your questions to us. We'll have all our contact information up at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will now hand it over to Dave Willis for today's presentation.
Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for being here. Again, I am Dave Willis. I'm an environmental program consultant and the DC Fast program manager for the Volkswagen settlement. Today we are talking about community and destination ZEV infrastructure. So what can you expect today? Obviously, we're going to talk about the community and destination charging RFP. We're going to talk about when and how to submit your application. We're going to talk about the project scoring, how we're going to compare your projects to other people's. We're going to talk about where to find information. We're going to make sure you have our contact information as well. And then we're going to do our best to answer all the questions that you have. Just as a reminder, this is not a public forum for comment or the implementation of the Volkswagen settlement. So let's get started. Basically, the RFP's already been released. Gotten a little bit of feedback from that already. It was released on October 15th. We'll be opening the applications in the GMS with a grant management system on November 15th. Your applications will be due January 31st, 2025. We've extended that a little bit just because of all the downtime for the major holidays we're getting ready to run through. During February of 2025, we'll be doing the evaluations of the projects. And then March, we'll be doing the selection committees for the projects. And then in April of 2025, we'll be announcing those awards. Now, who's eligible? Any organization in the state is eligible. Basically, the only people that aren't eligible are going to be individuals, government, non-government, public-private partnerships, anything in between, as long as it's not an individual, is eligible. We have some specific legal language in the RFP, but that's basically a bolt down. We have $1,890,000 available, just under $2 million available for funding. This is our leftover funds from the DC Fast and Level 2 phases that we've had before. All the applications must include at least one DC Fast charger. We are looking for a mix of DC Fast and Level 2. The only exception to that is going to be if the application is replacing storm damaged infrastructure in one of the counties that's federally designated a federal major disaster county. And those were after September 26. Documentation of the damage will be required. And if you're in this situation, definitely give me a call. We'll sit down and work on what we need to see from you guys. That's another reason we wanted to extend this out for a little bit to make sure people have plenty of time to apply. The last must on this is that it must be a mile off the North Carolina alternative fuel corridors. We have a table in the RFP, but we also have this map to kind of show where the alternative fuel corridors. Your site must be 1 mile off the AFCs. And this is so we don't have any conflicts with NEVI. We want to be as supportive of NCDOT's NEVI program as possible. And we're actually looking to focus on communities and not interstate travel with this RFP. Now, a little bit about the storm damage infrastructure. Your site must be covered under the federal major disaster declaration on or after September 2024. It can be for a standalone level 2 chargers only. If it is for just a level 2 charger, we will award up to 100% of that project for government and 80% for non-government for eligible costs. There's some tables we'll get to in a little bit talking about what we expect, but this is a little caveat here that's different. We're going to try to fund these a little bit more aggressively because they're potentially need a little bit more help. If an applicant applies under the storm damage for DC Fast, the per port cost in the RFP and a little bit later will apply. That's just going to be the maximum funding we can do for DC Fast. Just as a reminder, this is a competitive reimbursement program. The competitive part is your project is scored. We will compare you all the projects that we get and compare all the applications, and we will score them. Then the selection committees will go through and competitively award those projects. Reimbursement part is that you have to have the funds in place to pay for these sites up front, and then we reimburse you your award up to your maximum amount or your cost share. Just as a reminder, it is competitive. Okay, now I'm not going to read this, but this is directly from the RFP. For the DC Fast ports, we have different levels of funding. The lower kilowatt DC Fast receive less per port funding. And these are going to be, if it's government, it's 100%. If it's non-government, it's 80. But it's whichever is less. If it's the per port is less or your 80% is less. And you'll have to watch that. But just as a reminder, all that you can put forward in these projects as in-kind costs, the more competitive your project is going to be. So we'll talk about your budgets and things like that, but the more accurate you can get your budgets to be, the better off you are going to be in the long run to be competitive. We do have some port limits for the two lower categories. You can have up to 4 ports, or you can have 2 ports of the higher kilowatt chargers. Again, for the level 2 add-ons, you can add up to 8 ports of level 2 charging. For community charging, we really want to focus on being able to provide charging that the community needs. A lot of these sites, you're going to have people that are going to be parking for longer than an hour, and it would be more appropriate for them to plug into a level 2 charger. So that's why we wanted to do the level 2 add-on. For government, that's $88,000 a port or 100%, whichever is less. And the same for non-government, it's $6,000 per port or 80%, whichever is less. And a lot of those percentages come directly from the Volkswagen settlement. Okay, so applying, you just need to remember all our applications are done through the grant management system. And do not wait till the last week to apply. You must have access to the grant management system or have requested grant management system access before January 13th. If it's after January 13th, the process just takes a bit of time, and it goes from our group to a security team, and we have no control over the security team. We cannot guarantee you access if you apply for grant management access after January 13th. Okay, just as a reminder, we will be giving this presentation out to everybody. All the links in here will function when you're in presentation mode, so you can get the links out of here. So this is just an overview of all the items for the grant, for applying, and the steps that you need to go through. To get grant management access, you're going to have an NCID. We're going to need a little bit of information about your business or your government agency. You're going to have your project information, like your GPS coordinates and your station location, your street address. You're going to need to know, you're going to have a quote from a vendor for a charging equipment, how many ports you're going to want, your spaces, parking spaces, that is, the model, manufacturer, etc. We just kind of need to know. And then you're going to need quotes for the installation. Do you need 2, 4, 6 bollards? Do you need trenching, concrete work done? Do you need curb and gutter put back in? We're going to need a host site letter of commitment. This is not the host site agreement. This is just a letter of a commitment from the host site. They'll sign it saying that they agree to go into negotiation with you on a host site agreement. You'll need something from the utility side assessing the load at your site. Sometimes this is in the form of a letter or just that you've reached out to your utility provider. You're going to need a local map to show the amenities in the area. Google Maps works for that. You also need a site map that shows us where your charger is going to be located, what the parking spot, where the parking spots are going to be, and that can just be a general thing. Some of those are a little bit up to the installation time, and we know those change a little bit. Also, any supporting documents that you need, say a letter from your town manager saying they're excited about the project and they fully support it. Um, the businesses in the area supporting the project, anything that can add value to your application. Reminder, you'll see this slide a couple of times, but do not wait till the last week to apply for grant management access. Um, every program that we've done, people have, and sometimes people have not been able to apply because they've waited too long. Okay, now to get into the grant management system, that's the first thing. You have to have an NCID. You go to the, okay, this is where it gets a little bit of if you're this, you're this. For most people, you're going to get an NCID from myncid.nc.gov. You'll go there, you'll create your NCID. We have a great tutorial that walks through that process. If you're in a county or a state agency, you might already have an NCID, which you can use that same ID. If you're in an agency that doesn't issue everybody's NCIDs, your county might have a person that controls the NCID. You might have to reach out to figure out who that person is. And we can help you. But the easiest way is try to create one and it'll tell you if you can't. Use your work email for that. For your NCID, it's basically your username and password credentials for the grant management system. For the NCID, it's basically formatted after your name in some format because the NCID is for you specifically, not for your business. So for me, it's Dave Willis. I would be like D Willis or D Willis 28 or 51 since I'm 51 now. It's just some number that's relevant to you at some point. The examples we have here are Wile Coyote, Wile Coyote, Wile Coyote 2, or W Coyote. Just some form of your name, not your business name. So if I had Dave's EV charging, um, Dave's EV chargers would not be a valid NCID format for this program because it's an individual NCID for you, not for your business. We use you to link to your business. We request your W-9, your substitute W-9, and we link those two together in the system. We do request the substitute W-9 for all the businesses that are going into the grant management system. This is not your social security number. This is the business's uh, employer identification number, EIN, or the TIN for the company, not you. We will request that. And again, this is not the federal form. This is the state of North Carolina substitute W-9 form. So when you're applying for that, you're going to fill out this form that's represented here. Just make sure that when you're doing that, the very first drop down, this catches a lot of people. You need to select the Department of Air Quality. North Carolina, we are the Division of Air Quality. And that changes that form to allow you to put in all the pieces that we need. You'll email the W-9 that you filled out or somebody in your agency or company filled out to this email address, and we'll process that and send it over to the security team. Once that's done, well, I should mention this before we go to the next slide. If your organization has been in or already in and you have 3 users already and 2 people have left, you're going to need to clean that up at this time. We can only have 3 users linked to a business at a time. Old users will need to be removed, and we can do that all at the same time. So we would just, whoever sends in that W-9 would say, hey, so-and-so is an old user. Just give us their name and we can look up their NCID, or the security team can, as they remove them, can look up their NCID. So once all that's been processed, you will receive an email, a welcome email from the EBS, which, the government, we love our acronyms, but that stands for Enterprise Business Systems Portal. This is the portal to the grant management system. So you'll get an email with the links to log in, and it'll remind you that you'll need your NCID and password as your credentials. If something goes wrong, your first and best bet on logging into the EBS portal is to go to the NCID website first. And just make sure your credentials are right there and you can log in there. And then that should go back to the EBS portal and log in to the grant management system. And this email, I would suggest that you save this. It has that information in it, but it also has the links for you to get support when you can't log in. When you first get into the EBS, or the grant management system, with the EBS portal, to get to the grant management system, you will be prompted with a username and password. These are the links for the EBS portal. The grant management information system, we have a information that can be found here, and then we also have a downloadable user's manual that covers almost everything that you're going to do in this program. Online, we also have a training library that you can use that walks you through how to create an application, how to edit the application, how to create a claim, how to edit the claim, how to upload documents. All the things that you need to do in this process are documented in these locations. Now, just some tips and things to know. Again, don't wait till the last week. We always have people, hey, I'm trying to rush through this application. Can you help me out? We're not really, we can give you technical assistance, but we can't help you develop your application. You're going to need to reach out to vendors for help with your budget. If you're a government agency, you can use a state contract if your rules allow that. If you're reaching out to a vendor, we've had most of the vendors apply in the past. They'll know what we're looking for in the budgets, with the warranties, all the things that we require to see in your project. Make sure you discuss, and this is really a big point with a lot of these sites, because they do pull electricity. You will need to reach out to your local utility provider to get them to look at your project and say, hey, you're putting in this many DC fast, this many level 2. Yes, we have that much available power in your area. We don't have to drop a transformer. Or no, wait, we need to put in a pole mounted transformer. Or no, we need to put in a ground mounted transformer. And those are decisions that your utility provider has to make, and can really delay projects greatly. We do reserve the right to partially fund awarded projects. When you get your award letter, it might not be for what you requested, but the reward amount is the amount that we would go into contract with you. Remember your essays, which are part of this, we do read them and we do evaluate them and use them in the scoring process. Please, please, please make sure that they're relevant and accurate and consistent. You don't want to say one thing in one answer and then change it somewhere else. Make sure they're consistent all the way through. And yeah, we do read these. My suggestion is that a couple of sentences per each category is great. If you start writing a thesis paper in these, it gets a little bit tedious. I will do my best to read it, but please make them concise where possible. Just as a reminder, we will not be accepting paper, scanned emails, or fax applications, and we will not accept applications after the due date. We just can't. Do not sign any agreements with vendors or start work. And I can't emphasize this enough. We have had projects canceled because they started work too early or they had agreements signed in place. Do not work on these projects until you have a fully executed contract with us. The application award is not a fully executed contract. The process works is we'll send you an award letter saying, hey, do you like us? Yes or no. If you accept the award, send it back, yes. And then we'll reach it back out to you and say, hey, we need these paperwork requirements to move forward into the contracting stage. We'll get that information. We'll send it to the contracting team. The contracting team will send you a copy of the contract and say, hey, here's the legal language. These contracts aren't up for negotiation. This is just the standard state contract. You can accept the contract and move forward with us. Um, we've really shortened it down to be just a standard contract. Um, when you sign it, you send it back to us. Our contract team will then sign it and send you a fully executed contract at that time. And you can imagine that takes a couple of weeks to get that done once we have all the documentation in place. Um, and take a little break before we go into the other sections, but if you haven't subscribed to our email list, our VW email list, please reach out to this email address, the daq.nc_VW grants at, and that should be DEQ, I believe. I'll verify that email address. We've had, this email address will still work for another year at least. So you can use this email address and we'll get that fixed for when we post this presentation. Send us the word subscribe in the subject line, and we'll get you subscribed to make sure you don't miss any information about the Volkswagen grants. So what we're going to do is we're going to switch gears a little bit and talk about the competitive nature of these projects and talk about the scoring criteria. And so, sorry. The project scoring, we're going to score your projects on cost effectiveness, county classification, the distance off the alternative fuel corridors, environmental justice, your application type, and your accessibility and proximity to amenities. We have 3 bonus categories this time: bonus points, renewable energy certificates. Are you going to do RECs? Are you located in a historically under-resourced county? And is your project located in a federal major disaster area on or after September 2024? So that makes some of these projects will score really high, with a total possible points for each project being 130. Now, what we're going to do is just step through to make sure we're clear about what we expect or how we're going to calculate these scores, because this is very important. So for cost effectiveness, it is 25 points, a maximum of 25 points. And what we'll do is we'll rank each project from the most cost effective to the worst, and the points will be divvied out in that manner. So cost effectiveness is calculated. It's the Volkswagen funds, not the cost share. It's just the Volkswagen funds, not what you're going to put into it. So the more money that you can take and do in-kind costs and things like that, the better this ratio is going to be when it's actually a score. But VW divided by the maximum available kilowatts. So it's all the kilowatts, the number of ports at the site multiplied together, and then divided by the Volkswagen funds divided by the maximum kilowatts. So if you have a total of 4 ports and then maximum number of kilowatts is, say, 500, you'll just take the money divided by the 500 kilowatts, and that's the score for the cost effectiveness. So the county classification is very simple. You're either rural, suburban, or urban. Rural gets 10 points, suburban 5 points, urban 0 points. This is listed out in the Appendix A of the RFP. Okay, and then the distance off the alternative fuel corridor, it's a maximum of 15 points. Sites farther from the AFC will score higher. So the further are away from the alternative fuel corridor, the better. So if you're over 5 miles, you get 15 points. 3 to 5 miles is 10 points. 1 to 3 miles, 5 points. And if you're under 1 mile or less, you're not eligible. So we're just trying to support community charging and move away from working off the alternative fuel corridor. So environmental justice, it's a maximum of 15 points. And the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respects to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. Historically, people of color and people of low income, along with other vulnerable populations, have been disproportionately exposed to harmful pollutants, including those emitted by diesel engines, such as NOx and PM. So, nitric oxide and particulate matter. And here in North Carolina, to determine environmental justice scores for the purpose of ranking and rating vehicles and projects, the following analysis was done at a block group level using the 2019 American Community Survey 5-year estimates. The ACS is a demographic survey conducted each year by the U.S. Census Bureau to collect detailed demographic information. For this analysis, an aggregate of 5-year data from 2017 to 2019 surveys were used to increase reliability. And we have a lot of information about that in our Appendix B of the RFP. Now, the applicant type, and basically government, nonprofit, and non-government are scored. Government are 10 points, nonprofit are 5 points, and non-government are 0 points. I think that's pretty straightforward. Okay, and accessibility to, and proximity to amenities. Okay, how close are you to? Do you have on-site bathrooms and restrooms and food? Are the local restaurants nearby or retail shopping on site? If it's on site, it's 25 points. If it's less than a quarter mile away, it's 15 points. If it's a quarter mile or more away, it's 5 points. Really want to emphasize local. I mean, we want these to be in the community area, where in downtown areas, at destinations that have these amenities. So renewable energy credits, the RECs, if you plan for 100% of your power usage, that's a 10-point bonus. If it's 51 to 99%, it's 7.5. If it's a quarter to half, it's 5 points. If it's 125, it's 2.5. Your vendors can help you calculate your power needs for this. It's based on an estimate. We will review your estimates to make sure they're appropriate. The vendors can really, really help you decide if this is going to be something that you want to do. Some companies and counties and cities have this as already have this as part of their mandate. They already purchase renewable energy credits for all the power they use. And then our historically under-resourced county, we're giving a 10-point bonus. These are counties that are underserved, that have an underserved population that's greater than 15%, and are designated as a Tier 1 county by the North Carolina Department of Commerce. Appendix C in the RFP has this listed out in great detail. And for our last scoring criteria, the projects that are in federal major disaster counties, we're giving those counties 10 points. This is something that came up this time with response to the hurricane and the tornadoes in the eastern part of the state. If your project is covered under a federal major disaster declaration, we definitely want to help you if it's storm damaged equipment or trying to get infrastructure to help support these areas. Now, the applications close January 31st. You should definitely not wait till the last week to do this. We're giving you a lot of time. All of November, all of December, all of January. And we know that there's some major holidays in here, but you need to start working on these now. All of this has to be submitted by the grant management through the grant management system. We can't accept paper, scanned emails, or faxed applications, and we can't accept anything after the due date. So that means you have to get in the grant management system. You have to request that. If you don't have access now, go ahead and request it over the next week or two. If you have people that need to come, we need to clean up the access for your business, then we can take care of that at the same time. Just again, going through the dates, the RFP opened. The released, sorry, I said open. We released RFP on October 15th. The applications in the GMS will open November 15th. We will be accepting applications until January 31st, 2025. Don't delay. Proposed applications will be reviewed in February of 2025. Then in March of 2025, we'll be making our project selections, taking them to the committees that are going to do the selection. And then we'll make the awards in April of 2025. Just like any schedule, the first parts are pretty much set in stone. And we're going to do our best to meet the February, March, and April deadlines for that. Again, January 13th, you must have access to the grant management system, must have requested access to the grant management system, or we can't guarantee you're going to make it in. You have to request that access early. So the contact information is in here. Here's my information. If you need me, give me a call or email. Stephen Rice is our Plants Branch Supervisor. His information. Brian Phillips is our Section Chief. His information as well. If you have questions, please let us know after the fact. That's your primary, the three of us are the primary people that you can ask for information about this. One last plug for this, and it's corrected here. And either address will work. Just send us an email to this address with subscribe in the subject, and we'll get you subscribed to our mailing list. And with that, we'll move into the question and answers. I know we just threw a lot of information with you. If for some reason you think right after we end this, just send us an email. We will do our best to get you your answer as soon as possible.
Right. Thank you, Dave, for the excellent presentation. Yeah, definitely a lot of information in there. So as a reminder to all the attendees, if you have a question, there's a Q&A box down in the corner there, so you can type in your question to submit it. And if we do have anybody that has called in on the phone, remember you can press *3 to raise your hand or lower your hand, and we can get your questions answered that way. So I've got a couple here um, that we've had in the past to get this started. So I'll start with this one. When can I expect to be reimbursed for my project? So, what all do I need to have together? Um, and when can I kind of expect to have that?
Okay. So when a claim is processed, you'll go into the grant management system and enter the bare bones of what you need. Then we have a checklist that actually goes through all the pieces that we need that's available on the website now. But it's basically going to be proof that the site is in, an installer, the final report. Um, it has the receipts, basically proof of the money you've spent out. You'll have to have proof that checks were written or however they were paid. For banking information, make sure you delete all that from information. Redact is the word I was looking for. Redact the information that we don't need to see. We just need to see the amounts. Um, and then photos of the site. Um, Once we get the claim started, we'll actually go out and visit the site in most of these areas. Um, and then we'll do an on-site survey. And then once that's approved up through, it takes a couple of weeks to get the claim to process, once everything's accepted in. But once you start that claim, we're going to reach out to you and talk to you about the status of your claim. But it's all done through the grant management system.
All right. So we've got another one here. Um, so you mentioned the 1 mile requirement from the NC Alternative Fuel Corridor. Is that 1 mile as the crow flies or 1 mile on a street path?
As it's driven, so it would not be as the crow flies, but um, however the cars would get there.
All right, so another one here, and you might have covered this, but the amount of award per unit or kilowatt output varied widely. Will any data be provided to explain those differences?
Um, Data, not really. Here I can go back to that slide. Um, and where? Okay, so um, the more typically the thought process and what we've seen in the past is the higher the kilowatt, the more it costs to put that in the ground. So the charger itself is going to cost more for a higher kilowatt charger. So and the same as in it costs more for the level two chargers, a lower kilowatt charger. Um, if it's a 8 kilowatt charger versus a 14.4, it's just they cost different. I mean, they're the lower the kilowatt, the less it costs. So that is why we've used that in the past to incentivize. Okay, well, if you're at the higher end, 121 kilowatts or higher, we're gonna we'll fund more to get those in the ground because it's important to have a faster charging experience as more and more people drive EVs.
Okay, thank you. Another one here. Somebody's asking if you could again go over the scoring criteria based on the distance off of the alternative fuel corridors?
Sure. Let's see. Now, just again, the farther you are, this is a physical distance off the alternative fuel corridors, the farther you are away, 5 miles or more, it's 15 points. So if you're 25 miles off the AFC, you get 15 points. If you're within 3 to 5 miles, you're in a downtown area that's just a little bit off the AFC, then you're going to get 10 points. If your downtown area or your um, business or attraction, a shopping center, is a little bit more than a mile or to 3 miles off the alternative fuel corridor, you get 5 points. So a mile or less, it's not going to be eligible. And that's we're definitely trying to avoid complicating the situation with NEVI sites.
Is there a maximum distance from the AFC?
Uh, the farther you are away, the better. Under this, I mean, I don't think there are too many areas of the state where you're going to get 100 miles off the AFC. Um, I mean, I'm talking about the map. I mean, let me pull that up. Well, that didn't work. Oh, because it's over here. Sorry. So when you think about the alternative fuel corridors, they're pretty much through the state. I mean, if you get up toward Murphy, that's probably one of the furthest distances. Maybe way up in here somewhere is going to be the farthest you can get, or somewhere down here in the tip of the state, which Murphy and there's not that much further out that way. Would be maybe up here in what is this Roxborough County, somewhere up here.
But there's only a minimum distance required, no maximum.
There's no maximum. No.
Okay. So these contracts have a 2-year to complete deadline. So what happens if the application's approved, but the vendor or manufacturer experiences production delays and extends the delivery and installation of these chargers?
Okay, so we've had experience in the past with things that go wrong. I mean, these are pretty hefty projects. If something goes wrong, reach out to us. Here's our contact information. We will work with you on that. We do have the ability at times to extend these projects. Um, we will have at least one extension for these projects that we can do, which would be a year extension. But if you have any issues, the talk with your vendor first, then reach out and just let us know. We also ask for quarterly reporting, so you can let us know then. But keeping us informed, um, we can definitely advocate for you and then assist you in any possible way that we can. That's what we're here for.
So if somebody already uses the EBS system for some NCDOT grant things, is that going to cause any conflict with accessing the DAQ's grant management system?
No. So what'll happen is if you're already in the EBS, they have a tile system. You just have a tile for the grant management system. Um, and I can show you what mine would look like. When you log in, it's going to be this. So you would have a tile for the Division of Air Quality Grant Management System. If you had one for DOT, there would be another tile here for NCDOT. So all your programs would just be stacked up. So there's several programs that are using this now already, that um, the broadband, some of the water infrastructure grants are being issued through this. We're not the only agency using this as a portal for their grant system. So no, it won't cause a conflict. And if you already have an NCID and access to the EBS, we would just you'd have to fill out our form to get the grant management system access, and they would just add it on to what you already have.
Thank you, Dave. Um, so I guess the last one I have here is, will you send an email with the presentation?
I know we're definitely putting it on the website. Um, I don't know if we send it out to the email list all at once or not. I can't remember actually.
But if you want the presentation emailed to us, you can just let us know and we can make sure
Yeah.
to get it sent directly to you.
Yeah, we'll
Okay.
send a thank you email out to all the attendees. We'll have either a link to the presentation or attached with the copy. And we'll like that link just so we don't send out a large presentation by email.
Right. Yeah. We can send the link, would be the easiest.
Right. Well, that's all the questions I have so far. If you have any questions, give you a brief moment to get those in before we wrap up for the day.
And no, really, if you have any questions after this, reach out to us. I really can't emphasize enough about getting into the grant management system. If you already have access, that's great. Um, check your NCID, make sure that works, then try to log into the grant management system. Um, we do process those internally and then send them to a security team. So, usually takes a couple of days to 2 weeks to get those processed. But after this, if you have questions, reach out to us. I mean, we really want to assist in any way possible to answer your questions, to help you with any of this. It's a lot of information, and that's what we're here for.
Well, I'm not seeing any more questions coming in, so
And
suppose we can wrap it up.
Dave, you have another webinar coming up for this program?
Yes, we'll have an actual walkthrough of the application that's going to be closer to November 15th. Um, we'll walk through the application process. We do have a couple of additional resources that once you get into the grant management system that you can see that'll walk you through some of that process. We'll talk about making sure that you have all the resources that we need to see for your application, um, just to make sure it's relevant.
I'm seeing that on Thursday, November 14th at 2 p.m.
I was looking that up.
And you must register to attend.
All right, I suppose that's it for the questions. Thank you everybody for joining us for this webinar today. Always feel free to reach out. We'd be more than happy to help. And we will see you in a couple weeks for the next webinar.
Thank you, everyone.